Hey guys, welcome to Diablo 4 Into the Endgame. Today we're going to be watching this video that Blizzard put out explaining what the Diablo 4 Endgame is going to be. I have watched this video 5 or 6 times at this point. I have some notes over here, and we're just kind of going to go through it and talk about the systems that they're introducing. Blizzard has kept this pretty close to their chest. I don't know if that means that it's something that we should be worried about, that they haven't fully fleshed out the system yet, or that they just didn't want to spoil it. I suspect it's that they haven't fully fleshed out their systems, but I guess we'll see after this video.
We're really excited about getting this game into players' hands and letting them experience this massive world.
World is pretty big.
The cornerstone of D4 is play your way. As a player continues to advance through the story and into the endgame, they'll unlock a ton of brand new activities that provide meaningful progression, no matter their playstyle.
Players will be able to keep progressing in the narrative of the game. Alongside that, the whole team is working.
I actually wonder if that means that the end game is going to be actually progressing the story in some meaningful way. We weren't every Diablo game so far, the story just kind of pauses at the end, and then we just kind of freeze in time while we do our stuff, and nothing that we do ever ever progresses the story. But maybe they will progress the story in between expansions, because we all know there's going to be an expansion to Diablo 4, and I wonder if that there's going to be Diablo 4 thing, and then there's going to be end of Diablo 4 story, and then there's going to be a couple things that happen, and then that leads into new expansion. But it'll be interesting to see.
Worked on crafting a variety of different experiences players can pursue.
We're going to have an entire world of Sanctuary for our players to offer. There's going to never be an absence of something to do.
After the player has finished the campaign,
collect
there's
10
a lot more
wolf
games to go and
pelts.
participate in. They gain access to a special, what we call capstone dungeon that they have to complete. Once they're able to finish this capstone dungeon, they're going to gain access to the first world tier.
As you complete the world tier, it will open up the opportunity for you to go into your next world tier. That involves unlocking powerful loot, new items.
So for quick reference,
Opportunity for you to go into your next world tier.
I think they misspoke there. They said that you go into your next world tier after capstone dungeon, or world tier 2, but you can start at world tier 2. At least you could in the beta, and I don't think they'll change that. So what he really means, I think, is that you'll go from world tier 2 to world tier 3, which will unlock new legendaries and uniques and all that jazz. Also give you more experience and gold, like there was in that screen.
Powerful loot, new items, and more advantages for your player to have a better opportunity at end game.
Whether you're a fan of dungeons, PvP, or just roaming around the world, there's a way to continue your Diablo adventure long after hitting max level.
Growing your
As
power.
the character continues to grow in power, you'll start with the skill tree and expand out into the Paragon system.
A lot of the choices the players make are grounded on skills themselves and the fantasies associated with those skills. The Paragon board is a place where we're allowed to have.
Okay, so the Paragon board, it looks like, is mostly 90% +5 intelligence, +5 dex, +5 strength or willpower, whatever. And then you have sort of this legendary node. I think that's what this is. That'll give you some kind of legendary power, which is nice. And then the big mystery that they have not told us anything about yet is glyphs. As far as we know, glyphs will have an area of influence around them that will affect or change the nodes or get some bonus based off the nodes. We just don't know. What I think they are is they're going to be something like they are in Path of Exile, where they kind of have this range of influence, and they'll either change or give you some kind of bonus depending on what skills or what nodes are in range. So you can see here, this gives +10 intelligence, but if I socket that jewel, it becomes +10 devotion. It's not really important what devotion is. It's just gives you a bonus based on this jewel. So gives you like 4% increased area damage and 4% increased elemental damage. But the more important thing is that it changes these capstone nodes. You see, with the dual socketed, this big node becomes 3% more spell damage per power charge, and you gain power charges instead of frenzy charges. But if you unslot this, then it becomes a completely different skill. So slotting the jewel in changes what these things are. And I hope it's some system like that.
Have a lot more depth, a lot more customization, many more options as you go.
You can rotate the board, so you can choose a different path if you're like, I want to do more strength-based things, or I want these particular boons or glyphs. You can chart your path through it, and they're really a way for you to keep expanding your character and making it uniquely yours.
Oh, something I forgot to mention is that they have this refund cost of 53,000 gold per node. And there's quite a lot of these nodes. So if you wanted to go through a different path, it'd be quite costly. Now, that being said, it's very unclear how much gold we're actually going to be getting, because in the beta, I think I had like 300,000 gold by the end of it. I probably could have had a lot more if I didn't spend, so much of it on like fully upgrading my gear and whatnot. But I suspect if these are the numbers that we're looking at, we should be making in probably the hundreds of millions of gold, because otherwise this cost would be very prohibitive. At least tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. Which I kind of wish they'd actually just decrease the amount of gold these costed rather than inflate the amount of gold we're getting. But I guess it's the same either way.
And they're really a way for you to keep expanding your character and making it uniquely yours.
Similar to the Paragon boards is the Codex of Power. It's an in-game system that holds the aspects related to the character.
Not really an endgame system. This is like more of a core system of the game, but that's a little semantical. It's just the thing where you can extract out legendary powers and put them into rares, transforming them into legendaries, or you can go to a dungeon and grab a very specific power, legendary power, so you have like more of a system where you for sure can find certain legendaries.
You are able to complete a dungeon, and they will have a chance to drop an aspect that you can pick up.
And what this allows players to do is...
She says that it'll have a chance to, but in the beta we got it every time. I really hope that it's not a chance and that we just get it, especially considering that we know that all of these aspects are just worse versions of the actual legendary powers that we can get. So if you find like a legendary with Wind Shear has up to a 5% chance to fully restore your spirit, that might be like a 10% chance on a legendary that you find out in the wild, like an actual item as opposed to the aspect. These are more so just like kind of like guaranteed ways that you can get the important legendary powers to your build.
Is take items they're finding in the world and make them more powerful, turn them into legendary items.
It's really special to discover what kind of playstyle really means the most to you.
Nightmare dungeons. This is the most important thing, I think.
Sanctuary is fulfilling and satisfying. Dungeons in particular are really close to my heart. Nightmare dungeons are going to give the players the opportunity to experience a dungeon that they might have already experienced in their past playthroughs. They'll enter the dungeon with a found sigil that alters the playstyle and the intensity of the dungeon.
Yep, make a dungeon harder.
And they have additional objectives, and then they also have affixes, which add a degree of difficulty for you and your group to work through.
One of my favorite affixes that you can find in Nightmare Dungeons is actually called Hellgate. Occasionally, these portals will open up throughout the area that will just pour out different monsters that aren't native to that region for you to also be dealing with while you're trying to handle everything else inside the dungeon.
So to me, this isn't that interesting. It just is a way for them to increase density. The only way that this could add any interesting sort of factors to a dungeon is if those mobs drop different loot types than the ones in the dungeon already. I kind of doubt that that will be the case, but who knows? There supposedly different mobs in different regions can drop different appearances, so maybe there's some precedent for that. The thing that they don't talk about in here that I really want them to talk about is the Nightmare Sigil mechanics. Like what are the actual mechanics of the Nightmare Sigils? They haven't shown us any of them. We don't know what they look like. And then what are the rewards for doing this? Are we just going to like have harder dungeons, or do we get better rewards for that? I would assume so. And if so, you know, how do we modify those Nightmare Sigils? And, you know, does it just give you, you know, 25%, you know, more chance to find magic items? Or, you know, do we get the ability to drop like certain types of loot? Or, you know, what exists there? They just haven't told us.
There's over 120 dungeons to play through and find in Diablo 4, and any one of them can become a nightmare dungeon by finding a Nightmare Sigil and then using it to activate the nightmare version of that dungeon space.
Everything's a little darker, everything's...
Okay, so we go and we find, you know, Nightmare Sigils. Presumably, then they'll kind of be like rarer drops, or maybe we'll get a bunch of them, and then we'll have to like go to the actual dungeon. I really hope that this doesn't end up being exceedingly tedious, but it kind of sounds like it might be. I guess we'll have to see.
More difficult. It's going to add a little bit of a twist of flavor on your particular dungeon.
All right. This is the endgame exploration part.
Activities in Diablo 4 that suit what you're feeling in the mood for.
The Forces of Hell are starting to have more influence in certain parts of Sanctuary in the vast interconnected overworld of the experience. And as the players are going into Helltide areas, you're going to find...
Okay, so these are the terror zones of Diablo 4. If you played D2R, the Diablo 2 Resurrected, then you'll know that in the endgame, they made these sort of zones that were higher monster level that could drop new loot, and specifically could drop new types of items called Sunder Charms that were super, super powerful. I wonder if they're going to follow that kind of play pattern with these.
Even more powerful monsters, and by killing them, they'll be able to gain these special shards they can take to go and use to purchase these big rewards. Are available at these caches that are found littered throughout Helltide areas.
The sky darkens and the rivers run red, meteors fall from the sky, and the monsters get harder.
So you get some blood shard variant.
New experiences for the players. There's one I really like called Whispers of the Dead, which you get from the Tree of Whispers. The Tree of Whispers is great.
Now they're talking about bounties. Bounties are a system that I really, really didn't like in D3. They were very, very boring and just altogether not really a fun mechanic. They were just tedious, and the only reason that you would even do them is that you had to get the various sundry crafting materials, and there was a few uniques that you could only get out of bounty caches. So I kind of hope that they don't follow that pattern here, and that you can that there's nothing super unique to the bounty caches if you don't enjoy playing this way.
And a little gruesome, but it's also something mystically haunting and kind of beautiful.
Gross
The
tree.
tree has a little bit of a grudge against our players, and it would like for them to go serve its needs. So you're going to go serve these bounties, gather different rewards, different items, and bring them back to the tree in hopes that it can exchange you.
I actually think the design of this tree is pretty cool.
Maybe you're going to go to the Fractured Peaks and take out some werewolves that are rampaging in a town. They're contained activities that you can do alone or in a group. We really wanted to create variety for people to be able to spend time where they wanted to in the world. It's very cool the way it's been put together, and I can't wait for people to see it, to be honest.
Okay. The last part is about PvP, which I am not super interested in. I mostly wanted to look at the PvE stuff. PvP in ARPGs tends to not be very balanced because the damage to HP ratios are way off. So, I mean, if they make it balanced, that's fine. I'll probably play some either way, but that's going to be very, very hard to do. So that's sort of it for the video. I kind of want to talk about the things that they did not mention. They did not say exactly how Nightmare Sigils are going to work, how we're going to modify them, if we can even modify them. They didn't tell us, what the rewards were going to be. And they didn't tell us how glyphs were going to work. We have kind of a very rudimentary understanding of how glyphs are going to work. It doesn't really even say here. The final thing that they didn't talk about is the sort of goals. What are you playing the endgame for? I don't want it to be like Diablo 3, where we just kind of infinitely grind this greater rift, to 130, 131, 132. It's not interesting at all, really, as opposed to, something like Path of Exile, where you have these sort of capstone bosses where it's okay, I beat Maven, Searing Exarch, Eater of Worlds, Sirius, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I beat the Uber versions of those bosses, and that's kind of how you determine what your goal, is for each season or league in the case of PoE. And I hope that Diablo 4 really has these sort of endgame goals to push for, because without those endgame goals, it's just kind of going to be, well, you play until you get your build together, and then you kind of quit because there's nothing to do after that. Once you have, once you have your whole build and all the items that you want, what more point is there to playing the game if there's nothing to test your build against? So that's it. They didn't really give us a lot to work off of there. They didn't really give us any new details, maybe a few things here and there, but ultimately kind of disappointing. I hope that they give us more details soon. Until next time, see you guys.